Today's reading is Colossians 3:2. It reads, "Set your minds on things that are above, not on things that are on earth." So let's talk about mind. What is it? Mind is not an organ, yet it can relate to all of our organs. Mind is not consciousness. Consciousness is separate. See, consciousness is a wave pattern that is associated with a particle. So, in other words, in our body, there are trillions of particles there, and the consciousness is the consciousness associated with each of those particles, and we as a human being is a collective constitution of all of those elemental consciousness. In addition to the consciousness, God breathes into our nostrils every moment of our life. And that gives us, human beings, a superconscious capacity. So consciousness is different. Mind is not consciousness. Consciousness sustains itself with or without the particle. Mind is observing and discerning. Mind makes learning possible. Mind is capable of imagining. It makes it possible for creative synthesis. Mind is capable of synthesis, meaning it can learn from complex observations. Mind is willful. See, creativity, innovations, explorations, and execution of decisions are possible of our mind. Mind can communicate experiences. Mind can communicate emotions. For instance, our consciousness is full of love, full of joy, full of bliss. But it is only a state of being. Unless the mind chooses to communicate, it doesn't get communicated. It just remains a state of being. That's it. And mind can experience and communicate experiences just as well. Now, mind is also mortal, meaning there is materiality associated with mind. See, a lot of us think mind is memory. Mind is not memory. See, memory is something that is stored in our being. Mind is not memory. But mind can retrieve from memory and process what it retrieves. But you see, when I said mind is mortal, we know of ailments that can deteriorate our mind. For instance, dementia, it deteriorates our mind. So there is some perishability and mortality associated with our mind. When we die, our mind is dead, but our consciousness remains. Mind is an abstract and a complex phenomenon, yet the human intelligence wants to fragment, define, and make absolutes that would lend themselves to theoretical reductionism and knowledge of duality, even about our mind. Well, this is story time. There was a spiritual master, and the master and his student were going for a walk together. And the master sees a young woman at a distance about to ring a bell inside the temple. So the master points to that woman and asks the student what he sees. The student correctly responds that he sees a woman inside the temple. The woman rings the bell, and the master asks the student, "What did you hear?" And the student says, "I heard a sound, and it is the sound of a bell." Well, it's quite ordinary, isn't it? But if we reflect on it, the mind made an observation. The discernment of the observation was based on a perception the student already had. And the observation is the same as the sound of a bell. Brothers and sisters, see, when we make an observation is an observation. But learning from that observation, it's really a function of our perceptive memories. It's a function of our perceptions. For instance, see, you are listening to what I'm saying right now. But when you listen to me, most of the time is spent on what you already know. If what I say is consistent with what you already know, you are agreeable or disagreeable. So, the learning is not based on observation. The learning is based on your perception, what you already know. And perception creates sensory experiences. You see, the perception knows that it is the sound of a bell. So it is not the observation created the experience, the perception created the experience. And we believe perceptions are realities. Brothers and sisters, it is an interaction between a spiritual master and his student. Therefore, the story is not over until there is a lesson. So let's search for this lesson. Did the student observe everything in the direction the master was pointing to? No, he did not. He did not have a photographic observation of everything in between the woman and himself. Did he hear everything in the radar of his observation? No. He did not listen to the crickets chirping, the birds singing, the sound of the environment in his radar of vision. He did not. Did he experience all realities he possibly could have experienced? No. So if not, what was standing in the way? See, there is something else. The spiritual master or a guru wanted his student to be realized of. See, when I say realized of, realization means knowing everything there is to be learned as the truth itself. See, truth is very elusive. The minute we normally think, okay, we have nailed the truth, no, it opens up to, more questions. See, the truth is when there is no opening up for another question. And that truth comes from the spirit within. So that is what realization is. It is knowing by knowing the ultimate truth. That's what realization is. So the guru here is trying to see if the student is ready for such realizations. See, we read in the Acts of the Apostles that people carried the sick onto the streets and laid them in carts and mats in order that Peter's shadow might fall on them as he came by. Acts of the Apostles 5:16 says, a great number of people would also gather from the towns and around Jerusalem, bringing the sick and those tormented by unclean spirits, and they were all cured by the shadow of St. Peter. See, in these occasions, Peter did not stop, connect, and heal those people with his prayers and healing graces. He did not. He did not have to. In his total awareness, by way of observations of everything that is present, he was consciously aware of the pain and sufferings, and he connected with them in consciousness through his mind. Such transformations were common even when people gathered around Jesus. See, when people gather for an audience with a spiritual master, many of them do not feel comfortable approaching the master and share with him their pain. And there are a number of sensible reasons why people don't do that. regardless, a master must consciously connect with each and every one of them in their audience. The master must have perfect awareness of the various stages of trials that these people go through. Even then, if the master wills for a miraculous healing or transformation, it will happen. There is nothing surprising in this. Jesus said, if you say to this mountain, be taken up and thrown into the sea, and if you do not doubt in your heart, but believe what you say will come to pass, it will be done for you. So it is not actually the function of the consciousness. It is a function of your mind to believe and trust and to be willful about your observations. See, spiritual masters do not usually call a suffering person to the stage and showcase a miracle for the glory of God. Their presence is enough. Large-scale healing and miracles naturally go on in their presence. See, multiplying food to feed the hungry. I have personally witnessed 2 Hindu spiritual masters perform this miracle to feed thousands. In one of these, I was a participant in the miracle. I was the person in charge of the food supply. I knew when we ran out of food. See, so it is not a question of whether a Hindu mystic performed this miracle or not. By the words of Jesus, every Christian should be able to do this. The question is, why are we not able to do it? That's what the question is. When we contemplate, brothers and sisters, when we contemplate, meditate, or even focused on mundane tasks, we would get an intuitive spark to pay attention to something. I get this all the time. In such situations, our attention must be 100% photographic in seeing, and it must be fullness in listening. When we fail to be in that mode, a miraculous encounter or a revelation is likely to escape us. See, it is not the nature of God that He waits until we reach certain milestone for Him to reveal Himself, for Himself to reveal His excitement for us. Quite often, He cannot wait to reveal Himself to a seeker. Nonetheless, to evolve in spirituality and be in a capacity to serve humanity and the universe, we must persevere to develop this conscious state of full awareness and be able to engage our mind to manage this awareness. God is in a hurry to reveal himself. Therefore, realizing this conscious state of awareness is critically urgent to a seeker. This is what the spiritual master was attempting to teach his student. Brothers and sisters, many of us think that the mind is the same as our memories. Not true at all. Mind does not store memories. Memories are not only stored in our brains, but all of our organs can store them. In India, in Indian philosophy, this is known as Rinaunubandha. It is an attachment our body develops through sensory experiences and makes these experiences memories. See, even our DNA can store a long line of ancestral memories from our generations past. However, the mind can sense, yet it is not an organ. It is fully capable of receiving and processing sparks of intuition. See, it is not the same as the organic receptors in our brains and in our organs, but it is fully capable of processing even the bursts received by the other organs in our body. Mind can synthesize and analyze complex thought patterns. It can imagine incredible thought patterns, fragment them, and reformulate them through synthesis, resynthesis. Mind is willful in the sense it can control our body and our memories to participate in a creative and expressive endeavors. See, without mind, we cannot communicate our emotions. A mind must be a part of communicating emotions, whether it is to another human being or whether it is to a universal being or even to the universal consciousness itself. The mind must be involved in communicating emotions. Even beyond participating with the universal consciousness, mind can participate in extraterrestrial consciousness just as well. It can participate with the consciousness of other saints. It can participate with the consciousness of even God. The mind in perfect state of realization, it can permanently evolve as the consciousness with which it participates. Or it can temporarily also evolve as the consciousness with which it participates. It is entirely up to the will of our mind. This is the ultimate power and potential of human mind. See, this is the mind Adam had before the fall. if you read my book, Supreme Consciousness, I am talking about the mind of Adam in a biblical sense. Based on biblical mysteries, I'm elaborating the mind of Adam before the fall. See, this is the mind Adam lost because of the fall. And this is the mind Jesus died to restore in us. See, in the acceptance speech for an Academy Award, an Indian musician, A.R. Rahman, said, "And in all my life I have had a choice of hate and love. I chose love and I am here. God bless, inshallah," he said. See, the choices he made were based on a duality-based knowledge, hate and love. See, what limits our mind is a certain knowledge that we relentlessly possess. And that certain knowledge is our perceptions. Now, when we think what our perceptions are made of, our perceptions, we would quickly understand that our perceptions are made of a dualistic knowledge, a knowledge of duality. In Christianity, it's a knowledge of good and evil. In Hinduism, it's a knowledge of Dvaita, knowledge of duality. Transcending the knowledge of duality is most essential to realize the full potential of human mind. In other words, transcending our perceptive knowledge is essential to realize the full potential of our mind. St. Augustine of Hippo, see, for those of us who don't know him, he was a theologian and a philosopher, and he is viewed as one of the most important church fathers of the Latin Church, meaning a church institutionalized by Emperor Constantine. And St. Augustine of Hippo came soon after Emperor Constantine into the church. And his writings influenced the development of Western philosophy and Western Christianity. In one of the books, The Confessions, he wrote, "I was in misery, and misery is the state of every soul overcome by friendship with mortal things, and lacerated when they are lost. Then the soul becomes aware of the misery, which is its actual condition even before it loses them. St. Augustine recognized the urgency of a transcendent mind and the limitations of the knowledge of duality as an entanglement. In this passage, which is rather philosophical. Matters perish. So the memories and what occupied the mind of St. Augustine They are perishable. Consciousness, on the other hand, is eternal. St. Augustine is talking about soul, which is eternal. But then he is talking about something that perish. So he is actually talking not about the soul, he was talking about the mind, which is not the same as something that is eternal, which is consciousness. Duality-based intelligence does not take into account the conscious component of source intelligence when formulating theoretical systems. For instance, when we analyze the phytochemical components of a plant, we do not consider relevant the wave functions of these chemical particles. Even if modern science discovered every particle to have a wave counterpart, which is intuitively conscious energy of that particle, duality-based intelligence totally ignores this. Therefore, the duality-based human intelligence is mortal and perishable. Genesis clearly states that death is the consequence of the knowledge of good and evil. See, in this, evil is equally opposite to the counterpart of good. That is duality. St. Augustine states in the statement we read earlier that the hardest thing to let go of in spiritual seeking is our attachment to material possessions, even if they are the source of our miseries. For our mind, it is our attachment to the duality-based human knowledge, that is our perceptive knowledge, that prevents it from reaching the fullest human potential of our mind. The perceptive knowledge stands in the way. So, freeing ourselves from the perceptive knowledge is not a choice or a decision we make. Freeing the mind of attachments to materiality is a spiritual endeavor in itself. St. Augustine says, the mind commands the body and is instantly obeyed. Then the mind commands itself and it meets resistance. He adds, the mind is torn apart in painful condition as long as it prefers the eternal because of its truth, but does not discard the temporal because of its familiarity. How deep, how incredible this statement is. See, what we hold on to is our familiarity. Our perceptive knowledge is always there because of familiarity. See, when we sit and meditate, our mind is always active. It always wants us to pay attention to something else. And it always persisting in so much noise. only because it relates to familiarity. It does not want to go into what is unfamiliar. See, in spiritual journey, freeing our mind of material attachments or entanglements is not a process of discarding, but of transcending. In other words, it is not a process of getting rid of entanglements. See, entanglements will always be there. But it is a process in which we master our entanglements so much so that each of them steps aside from their relevance as a superior form of intelligence occupies the void it creates. Let me put it another way. See, when we progress in education, for instance, we go through transcendental stages, which we call grades. See, from kindergarten to degrees, to graduate degrees, and so on and on and on, we are actually in a transcendental progression of acquiring knowledge. See, in kindergarten we learned nursery rhymes. When we are in college and learning new subject matters and all of that, does the nursery rhyme still persist in our memories? No. So in the face of new learnings, the old learnings step aside. When they step aside, it allows room for new learnings to come in. See, it doesn't mean that the old learnings have disappeared, not at all. See, when we have children and when we teach them nursery rhymes, all of that comes back to us, even with more excitement and emotions and better experiences. So the old memories haven't disappeared, except it has moved away and allowed room for new knowledge to come in. See, this is what a transcendental process of knowledge, where we realize wisdom. This is what it is. See, the mastery also allows us compassionate emotions to flow towards lesser emancipated consciousness of other humans, even if they are not spiritually realized. Our emotions can flow towards them. Our consciousness can flow towards them. It can even flow towards the collective consciousness of the entire universe, which is universal consciousness. In essence, in a spiritual journey, we don't get rid of anything, but learn from everything. Even learn from our vices, learn from our sins, learn from our guilt, and transcend them. God knows when to bring them back and how to use them. All we need to do is keep transcending with His grace. That's all. Mastery is essential in transcendence. Without mastery, there can be no transcendence. See, mastery requires us to learn everything about our duality-based intelligence on a particular attachment. See, as children, we are very attached to our nursery rhymes. We are so excited about learning them. We are so excited about repeating them. We are so excited about dancing for them. We are so excited about animating them. See, but after we reach a stage, it just steps aside. That is what mastery is. See, and we need to understand that mastery is not something that fits all entanglements. Mastery is unique to every entanglement. There is a separate journey required to master every entanglement. As our mastery gets deeper and deeper, we will reach a point beyond which our source intelligence or duality begins to fade out as it is overwhelmed by the superior knowledge or wisdom in which all dualities emerge as oneness in the far superior knowledge of conscious energy. In this supreme consciousness, there is no Dvaita. The consciousness is Advaita itself. The knowledge is oneness. See, no knowledge of duality persists in supreme realization. Only the knowledge of everything, the knowledge of oneness. Even the knowledge of the Creator and the created becomes one and the same in Advaita and in supreme realization. See, how did we learn Dvaita? Let's look into it. Unless we know how we learned it, it's very hard to unlearn it. So let's look at how we learned Dvaita, which is duality. See, it is a socialization process starting at home. That is, our parents teaching us alphabets to a language that we already know. Then our peers and then our teachers at school stepped into the same process of socialization. It is a socialization process in which individualization is methodically programmed and integrated in our being, in our minds. In individualization, they start with reinforcing how clever, how smart, how intuitive, etc. as we progress in our minds, in our thinking. It is a process in which an emotion such as pride, satisfaction, sense of accomplishment, happiness, disappointment, sadness, guilt, feeling inadequate, desires, imaginations, etc. are given to us as validation of our progress and achievements made by our mind. See, we get to experience a spark of excitement as we progress in learning and competing with others. It is this excitement of emotion that is acting as the bonding agent to attach our material entanglements as emotional bindings to our psyche and to our memories. See, many of us are not in a psychological mindset to let go of these attachments. Therefore, the learning of Dvaita, or the learning of duality, is not only about the knowledge of duality, it also includes learning about the emotional bondings we have for this particular entanglement. See, Advaitic knowledge is so incredible and vast. In reality, it is the knowledge of infinity. Whereas the knowledge of Dvaita, which is duality, is a constant or a limited variable. In mathematics, constant or limited variable is really negligible and meaningless in the face of infinity. Therefore, duality-based knowledge does not stand a chance of survival when it encounters infinite wisdom. Except our emotional bindings to our attachments to duality-based knowledge, and the emotional bindings would fight for the survival along with our ego. That is what the misery St. Augustine was talking about. Mastery is learning. Learning of the emotional factor as well as the material factor of our duality-based perceptions. In transcendental stages, we go through the unlearning process. In prayers and surrender, it is the encounters and the realization of divine consciousness. The transformation takes place as transcendental progress reaches maturity. So this is an ongoing thing for a spiritual seeker. It doesn't happen overnight, but it happens. See, in psychology and other fields of science and education, we often hear about mindfulness. See, mindfulness also means we are dealing with a limited mind that can be made full. If the mind is of infinite capacity, mindfulness is totally meaningless. See, the mind has to be a limited container so that we can fill it and make it full, isn't it? If the mind is not a limited container, then mindfulness is meaningless, isn't it? See, spiritual mind is infinite. It does not have a capacity. It is totally free of past, future, structures, orders, algorithms, time, and order. In inner freedom, it strives to remain literally empty at all times. It is in nothingness the mind is exposed to everythingness of wisdom. See, if we go back to the story Spiritual master was not interested in what the student saw or what he listened. He was interested to know how empty the mind of the student was. What makes a human being beneficial to the universe is not his mindfulness, but the emptiness of his mind. When the mind is empty, photographic observations are natural. Even if the mind is free of data, information flows back and forth in the present moment. We can hear sounds of various decibels, even if the ones we don't have a perceptive knowledge about. We will witness and observe all sorts of conscious energies in participation with Supreme Consciousness. We can, in our awareness, we can allow our consciousness to converge with other conscious energies. In our willfulness of our mind, our consciousness can converge with other conscious energies and create particles that would destroy the affected particles in another immune system and induce healing in all universal beings. Brothers and sisters, we can listen to the crying of another human being who is miles away, and we can engage our mind, our conscious energy with their conscious energy and heal their pains. We can. With our resolve in participation, we can in fact make mountains move, according to the words of Jesus. Brothers and sisters, in spiritual transformations of our mind, anyone can become a genius. Anyone can become an artistic genius. Anyone can become a creative genius. Anyone can become an innovative genius. Anyone can become a scientific genius. Anyone can. It is because Jesus died to restore in us that kind of